Welcome back, Guardians. Profane here, and thank you for checking out the video. In today's video, we'll be taking an early dive into the new Prismatic Subclasses, and we'll be checking out the best ways to set up your Prismatic builds with each class. The final shape is introducing one of the most interesting subclasses in this game's history. Prismatic will grant Guardians the ability to pick and choose different combinations of light and dark based fragments, aspects, and other subclass abilities. And thanks to several new developer deep dives, we've been able to get a sneak peek on how these new powers will work. Along with these new prismatic powers, Guardians will have a new exotic class item that will be used only with prismatic subclasses. These new class items will include exotic perks found on pre-existing exotic armor pieces. There are 16 of these in total, and they will need to be unlocked before you can use them, and there will be a specific activity that players will need to complete and farm in order to get each of these. Before we get started, it's important to know that Bungie has stated that there will be more prismatic subclass abilities coming after the launch of the final shape, and after its raid has been completed. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into what we know now. As we dive into these prismatic subclasses, we'll be identifying the best PvE setups for Hunter, Warlock, and Titan. And we start with the Prismatic Hunter subclass. This icy hot medicated build is what I would consider to be the best overall PvE setup that Hunters will be able to use. The most powerful Hunter melee setup has always revolved around the use of the Archstrider with the combination blow, and Prismatic gives us a way to take those strengths and amplify them even more. Combination blow grants 100% class ability restoration, and it instantly charges health recovery after each charged melee final blow. It also grants a stacking combination blow bonus, which will stack up to 3 times. On one stack of combination blow, we'll gain a 60% bonus to melee damage, 150% bonus with 2 stacks, and an astonishing 309% when at a full 3 stacks. If we also add in a shotgun with 1-2 punch, we could amplify that melee damage even further, giving us all the power we would ever need to take down big beefy enemies. And when we look at the options and aspects to go along with combination blow, the biggest standout here is the combination of Winter Shroud and Stylish Executioner. Winter Shroud is going to cause nearby enemies to become weakened with stacks of slowing effects. If we're also using Dusk-filled grenades, will greatly improve our ability of keeping enemies weakened. And when we defeat those weakened enemies, we'll gain invisibility because of Stylish Executioner. When we're invisible, melee attacks will deal 150% increased damage against any suppressed, weakened, or volatile enemy. And that's going to stack right on top of the benefits that Combination Blow provides. Since Combination Blow gives us an increase in the uptime of our class ability, we can take advantage of a 20% increase to weapon damage whenever we're Radiant, and that's going to be triggered by the use of Acrobat's Dodge. This will last 8 seconds, but it'll get triggered off of each dodge, and it also applies that radiance to any nearby ally, and it will give all of our weapons the ability to pierce barrier champion shields. As far as our choice in super goes, I think Silence and Squall or Shadow Shot will be the most effective towards how we have the rest of this build set up, and either will be a great option towards crowd control. Before we talk about our choice in fragments, let's take a look at which exotic item perk that you'll want to assign with this build. The Spirit of the Syntheseps is a big standout option, but the Spirit of the Liar is going to give us a much larger damage bonus. This will grant the cross counter bonus whenever we receive or deal melee damage, and when this is active, we'll have a 200% bonus to melee damage, and it grants health restoration on every melee hit, both of which will stack on top of the bonuses that we'll have because of Stylish Executioner, along with Combination Blow. We'll also be using the Spirit of Caliban, which will turn every final blow from our Combination Blow into an ignition, giving us a huge advantage in crowd control. There's a lot of fragments that look really good on paper, and I think a lot of them will create some really nice synergy to how we have the rest of this build set up, but there's a select few that you'll definitely need to be sure to equip. Facet of Protection is going to give us a damage resistance bonus whenever we're surrounded by enemies, and this will be vital to our ability to stay alive whenever we're up close and personal. Facet of Purpose is going to give us a survivability bonus whenever we collect an orb, and it'll be based on which super we have selected. If we go with a Tether, we'll gain an Overshield, and Winter Shroud will give us Frost Armor. Facet of Ruin will increase the size and damage of the bursts of shattering enemies and stasis crystals, and it also increases the size of our ignitions with the use of the Spirit of Caliban, giving us the ability to absolutely nuke enemies with our charged melees. If we're using strand or void weapons in our loadout, I would strongly recommend using Facet of Bravery, since it will grant void weapons with volatile rounds whenever defeating enemies with grenades, and it will also grant strand weapons with unraveling rounds whenever defeating enemies with our melee. When it comes to our armor and armor mods, the main goal is to keep high resilience. Our abilities will already have great uptime, but it'd still be worth focusing towards strength. And by using armor mods like Siphon, Heavy Handed, or Reaper, we'll be able to keep a steady amount of orbs generated for us and allies. And that's the Prismatic Hunter build that I'll be rocking throughout the Legendary campaign and most likely into the new raid. So let me know your thoughts about the Prismatic Hunter down in the comments, and what options you think might be better. And with that, let's move on to the Prismatic Warlock. I think there's a lot of strong combinations that Warlocks will have between subclass options and exotic class item. This build heavily focuses around survivability and crowd control management, which I think is going to be the most important thing to think about when it comes to Legendary campaigns and that Day 1 raid challenge. To ensure our survivability, we're going with the Feed the Void aspect, and this is going to grant us Devour whenever we get an ability Final Blow. Once we have Devour active, each Final Blow will extend its time, and it's going to grant us bonus health recovery and bonus grenade energy. That bonus grenade energy will be pivotal to our ability of spamming storm grenades, which will create a powerful lightning strike at its impact. And before we hit our enemies with those storm grenades, we can get everything unraveled with our 3 arcane needles. We're also using the Helion aspect, so whenever we cast our class ability, we're going to create our little autonomous solar buddy, and that's going to inflict a lot of bonus damage against enemies, and its final blows should continue to proc Feed the Void. This will work great with either Rift option, but I really think the synergy that Phoenix Dive will have will be pretty lucrative as well. When it comes to our choice in super, we're going with Needle Storm because of its extremely high burst damage potential, helping us delete those big bads right off the board. When it comes to our choice in fragments, we're looking at Facet of Dawn because this will grant us and allies Radiance whenever we strike enemies with our arcane needles. Facet of Purpose will give us that woven mail each time we collect an orb, and Facet of Balance will be especially beneficial to us because rapidly defeating targets with our grenades or our solar buddy will grant us bonus melee energy, and rapidly defeating enemies with any dark energy, including our arcane needles, our needle storm, and any weapons will grant us additional grenade energy, maximizing the uptime of our storm grenades and our arcane needles. We'll also be using Facet of Hope, which is going to increase our class ability regeneration whenever we have an elemental buff. Between Radiance, Devour, and Woven Mail, we should be able to have rapid regeneration of our class ability, giving us a near endless supply of those Helion buddies, which is in turn keeping our Feed the Void active, keeping us alive and fully charged with abilities to spam. And now let's talk about those exotic class item options. We've got 2 to pick from, and we're going with the Spirit of Osmiomancy because it's going to greatly increase our grenade regeneration whenever we hit enemies with our lightning grenade. We're also going to be using Spirit of the Star Eater so that when we collect orbs, we'll gain a stacking bonus and damage that's going to amplify our Needle Storm by as much as 70% when we're at a full 4 stack of Feasting Light. Spirit of the Necrotic is certainly an enticing option, but I think ultimately the Spirit of Osmiomancy and Star Eaters will be much more beneficial. I think this will be one of the most exciting Warlock Prismatic builds, and one of the most effective team support and overall crowd control builds that Warlocks will have the ability of using. So definitely a build that you should try out when the final shape launches. but let me know your thoughts about the Prismatic Warlock down in the comments. As far as armor and armor mods go, resilience is still going to be priority, but so is our recovery, so both of those stats should be something to focus on. In terms of armor mods, orb generation will be key, so siphon mods, firepower, and reaper will be great to use. And on our boots, we'll want to use recuperation to give us an extra means of having health recovery. With Hunter and Warlock covered, let's talk about the best Prismatic Titan build that you'll want to have on day 1. This build takes a bit of inspiration from the Game of Thrones, as it's a transcendent song of fire and ice, with lots and lots of brimstone. We start things off with the knockout aspect. This gives us health recovery and grants us the amplified bonus whenever we defeat enemies with a melee. Whenever we break an enemy shield or strike a low health enemy, we'll trigger a 100% bonus to our uncharged melee damage and a 25% increase to charged melee damage. While knockout is active, all melee final blows will count as a charged melee final blow. And we're going to be pairing this up with Consecration to give us that big solar slam that scorches enemies. And with the use of Frenzied Blade, we'll have 3 charges of this Consecration. When we throw in Glacier Grenades, we can now get our enemies frozen, come in with that Consecration Slam that's getting overcharged by Knockout, and then shatter everything that's nearby. And then just keep repeating the process. A pretty effective gameplay loop. And to top it all off, we're using Thunder Crash as our super option, so once we've cleared out all the rank and file enemies with Consecration, we can finish off the big boys with that triumphant Thunder Crash. Barricades can be a nice option to have, but because it can be triggered so quickly and it gives us extra field mobility, we're going with Thrusters as our class ability option. When it comes to our choice in fragments, we're going with the Facet of Balance so that we can double down on our melee and grenade ability regen. We're going with Facet of Protection for the bonus resilience when we're surrounded by enemies. And we've also got the Facet of Ruin Fragment, so the shattering effects from our Glacier Grenades are going to be increased in size and damage, and our ignitions will also get supercharged. We're also using Facet of Dawn, so that we get that sweet 20% Radiance weapon damage bonus whenever we strike enemies with a melee. Now to top all of this off, we're looking at the Spirit of Inmost Light and Spirit of Armentarium as our exotic class item options. Inmost Light is going to give us a stacking bonus and ability regen, and a stacking bonus to ability damage, giving us a maximum of 35% increased grenade damage and 20% increased melee damage. And with the Armentariums also equipped, we'll gain an additional Glacier Grenade so that we can keep that gameplay loop of Consecration Slams going indefinitely. When it comes to armor and armor mods, Resilience and Strength will be the main 2 character stats to focus on. I would also definitely consider using a Grenade Kickstart mod to greatly increase the uptime of those Glacier Grenades. I think this is going to be one of the most prolific Prismatic Titan builds that's going to absolutely shred through any enemy, so definitely a build worth trying out on day 1. And with that said, we've now covered the best day 1 Prismatic builds to use when the final shape launches. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the new Prismatic Subclasses, the new exotic class items, and all these crazy combinations. Let us know down in the comments what you think the best combinations will be, and let us know if you have any questions about any of the Prismatic abilities. I wish you all the best of luck out there in the final shape. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. If you're a new Light Guardian just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran just looking for a new home, then be sure to check out the Discord link in the description below and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.